Alrighty, so this is a little bit of help for y'all for the Unit 4, which is about lists. So the first thing you should know is that a list is just an object in R which can contain components of multiple different types. So as an example, this is a list that I'm creating. It's called LST, and so we're creating it by making a list which contains four components. The college, which is a character component, OU. Major, which is another character component, math. Number of classes, which is a numeric component, the number 3. And then grades, which is a vector component with these values. So we can go ahead and create this object, and when we call it up in R, you'll see that it has the four different components. So if you wanted to invoke a particular component, for example, if you wanted to just see the grades, you can use double brackets. So here I'm using LST double bracket 4, and if I put that in the console, then it will return just the vector of values that were in the fourth component. Now, suppose I'm interested in this 95 right here, which is the second element of the fourth component of the list. Then I use double bracket notation followed by single bracket, which when you run it, it just pulls up a 95. And then another way that you can pull up particular components, you can use the double bracket notation. So pulling up the college, I can do LST double bracket 1. I can also call it by name, so double bracket and then in quotes the name of that component. Or I can use something very handy, which is this $ notation. If I go ahead and delete this, for example, I type in my list, LST, and then when I go to type in the $, it'll automatically give me the names of the four components. So I can just pick whichever one I want, run it, and it works the same as the double bracket notation. Now suppose I call up something that's not already in the list. It'll return a null value. But there are a couple different ways that I can store it. You can see them right here, and if I run them, you'll notice that it's a way to add something to the list. So that's pretty handy. In addition to lists, you also have items called data frames, which are kind of their own class. And data frames can be made up of a bunch of different vectors, as long as each vector is the same length. So one way that I can call this up is the data frame MT cars, which you'll notice has several different cars and then different vectors in the data frame with values for like their miles per gallon or like how many cylinders they have. This is a built-in data frame. Other ways that you can pull data frames in R are through like the as.dataframe function or the read.table function. These will all also create data frames in R. And the reason why you might want to use a data frame instead of just a list is because there are certain special functions that you can use specifically with data frames that don't work on just lists. For example, the by function. This allows you to get, for example, summary info for different components of the data frame. So if I wanted to get maybe the average miles per gallon for cars of different cylinders, I can run the function, and you'll notice that it gives me summary statistics for all the different values. So for example, cars with 4 cylinders have a mean miles per gallon of 26.66, whereas cars with 6 cylinders have a mean miles per gallon of 19.74. So this is a really helpful command function, and like I said, it only works in data frames. So that's an example of why you might want to use a data frame as opposed to just a list.